we see, I think in July, this story is all over internet, it's on social media, it's on YouTube. Some of my friends who work for OTTs saying, this is a brilliant Netflix docu-story. Come August 3rd week, 4th week, now we are looking at a different scenario there. There are serious questions about this complainant and what he has allegedly seen. Did, in a way, this pressure from YouTubers, the traction that this story got, as I mentioned, did it force force a lot of mainstream media to dilute their standard checks and balances and pick up the story and cover the way they did?
Let me not focus on what other media did. I can just talk about what we did at South First. So, the rule for us was very simple. Whatever information comes out, verify and confirm if it makes sense. Now, how do you verify and confirm this? The SIT doesn't speak. Or you go about saying sources. Sources are whom? Sometimes it's police personnel on the ground. But do you trust them? Because one of the police personnel was also pulled up for leaking information. So we focused, yes, there was pressure because you have YouTube channels, you have so much of information coming out saying that this happened, that happened. And then sometimes you feel that, okay, have you lost the story? Have you reported it properly? But then what we did was very simple. Waited for information to come out. And this is the age-old practice of journalism. Confirm. Confirm not with one source, confirm with multiple sources. So we might have had lesser stories when compared to many other news websites, because for us it was just about if this can be verified.
Sorry for cutting you. Do you think then there's this pressure, as many have already said, mainstream media did not cover it, didn't want to cover it, there's a watch up, and then there is a cover-up job the mainstream media is allegedly part of?
Harish, simple, very simple. So when let me use the word so-called citizen journalists, they're doing a good job, but when they bring out wrong information, people are not going to say citizen journalists brought out that story. They're going to use the term media brought out that story. So it rests upon us to fact check that information again. So it's a double whammy for us. When they make mistakes, the media is blamed. When they bring out good stories, then they say citizen journalists.
Amrita, we were discussing backstage as well, this whole story. And do you think somewhere there's lack of accountability? Sami, the guy, the popular YouTuber, he's now being questioned. I believe 17 spots, excavation has taken place, absolutely no evidence of mass burial. If it turns out that the SIT says we do not believe that there is any mass killing that's happened here, what happens to all these YouTubers?
Right. I'd like to start by saying that I don't believe that the state should be going about intimidating any YouTuber first, whether or not they have made mistakes. But I think one is also to sort of underline the fact that when a professional newsroom looks at something like this, an explosive allegation that's been made, or say the explosive allegation that Rahul Gandhi has made, one has to proceed via rules, via a certain protocol of following the facts. And in this case, and I have not followed Dharmasthala very closely because our newsroom has done only about one story, I think, on it. For the simple reason that we don't have our a lot of resources in the south. But I feel that when a newsroom faces this kind of a story, you need to have checks and balances which force you to tone down the kind of rhetoric that, say, a YouTuber can use. Right? You cannot pronounce judgment. That's what reporting or editors are trained to be. It is to look at the facts and say what can be said for sure, and to attribute who's saying this, who's making the claims, how much do you sort of rely on, like you said, who the person who's making these claims. In this case, for instance, the claims of bodies, even if they had been found, like for a journalist, for a newsroom to go from saying that the bodies have been found to a crime has been committed, there are several dots to be joined, right? as an editor, if somebody sends me a story that yes, bodies have been found here and so a crime has been committed, I will ask that reporter, like, you have to give me proof of 3 other instances or 3 other, you have to give me evidence to show that a crime has been committed. So I'm saying that the ease with which, sometimes people or any other sort of citizen journalism can jump from one point to the other is not possible for a professional newsroom, because we hold ourselves to a standard of accountability, which is that we are accountable for the facts we put out. I'm assuming that is not, of course, that's not what YouTubers, or sometimes we probably are not trained in that sort of school. So I think, I think that is the gap, and what people sometimes interpret as the national media or mainstream media sort of as some kind of a conspiracy theory that we don't want to interrogate the powerful people involved or allegedly involved in a certain crime. Sometimes it's not as black and white. Sometimes it's about doing due diligence, and that's really very sort of unglamorous, old-fashioned fact-checking and being sure of your of what you're saying, and that takes time. Yeah.
Also, let's not forget there was a gag order by the Karnataka High Court for a good week or so, asking outlets to not publish anything. Okay, Swastika, just coming to this point of doing fact-checking, doing due diligence, following the standard protocol, there is always a challenge, and that challenge becomes far more difficult in TV, since you've done TV for such a long time. We've already seen certain channels putting out a video given by this complainant saying, this is a video of us taking out the bodies, these are the bones that is in a sack, we are yet to give it to the police. Ideally, what should a channel or a journalist do?
Look, I'm all for citizen journalism. I believe that, in fact, way back in CNN News 18 also we had a landmark show called Citizen Journalist. Citizen journalism is great. If you have civic issues, we've had so many people, so many youngsters, in fact, shoot videos, send it across, and then the reporter of a respective channel would go, verify, and then the report would run at the byline of the person who sent it. It's great. From what I have read about Dharmasthala and closely followed both of you and other media outlets who've been at the forefront, yes, this was a story that came out by content creators, but they did not follow the protocol. Not everyone has a smartphone, content can be easily created by any of you, but not everyone is a journalist. What goes behind is a rigorous effort that Nolan pointed out, that Amrita pointed out. She's an editor, she looks at the editorial side. As reporters on the ground, your first thumb rule is to go and verify. You cannot have only one source. You have to verify the same information through different people, through at least 2 to 3 people whom you can completely rely on, because one source can always mislead. And right now, what fad we see in terms of various media channels reporting is sources. You cannot easily quote sources. So the labor work needs to be done. Now we are racing against time with respect to digital journalists. Those who put in the efforts, hats off to them, but in most case scenario what happens is, if a reporter takes more than 12 hours to come up with a fact, by the time there's already a viral video doing the rounds and the damage is already done. And that is something where one needs to really draw a line. And that is something that I believe every media organization right now, especially the legacy medias, are facing a challenge with. And as far as the YouTubers are concerned, again, many of you, please feel free to do content. It's fantastic to see new, fresh, refreshing ideas. But also remember, verify, and also do it with utmost responsibility, because it takes a lot of effort in verifying that one fact that you see in a newspaper or a TV report or any kind of journalism work that you follow.
In fact, Amrita, that brings me to the next point. You think a lot of YouTubers fail to really attribute. They pick up data or information that is reported by mainstream media, don't attribute, go on a monologue and give their opinion. absolutely very difficult to identify what is a fact, what is an opinion here, what is a fact reported by a certain news channel or a website.
Right, I think a lot of work, a lot of YouTubers also do attribute, and I'll sort of point out, say, Dhruv Rathi, for instance, who's done several videos, and he's done it based on the work of several print journalists, including journalism that we have done. But again, the point is that a lot of hard work goes into bringing out each of those facts that are in the public domain. And sometimes what we see as, if we go on to equate YouTubers with journalists, the danger is that we ignore the labor that goes into it. Also, I'd like to point out there's a very interesting trend of more and more politicians, they no longer in India give interviews to journalists, they give interviews to YouTubers. And now why is that? Why does Vijay Mallya go on this long podcast with a YouTuber to sort of set his story? Also, because there is very little pushback from these platforms. There is no cross-questioning. So it's very, for a politician, it's a great platform. You can get millions of views, but you're not facing one difficult question. Of course, this is an example that's set by the highest political from the highest political office. But again, for a lot of us, whether we are journalists or not, the idea is to have a critical thinking, to have, to test what is being put out. Everybody has their own narrative. Everybody wants you to tell their story. Now, how do you, as thinking citizens, figure out what's right or wrong? You test. So, as journalists, which is why we have this thing that we do not put out opinion, or that we test every claim that's being made, or at least we question that. So I think, again, that's the sort of difference of practice that I would like to point out, which is sometimes getting missed in this whole explosion of video journalism, or if you can call it journalism.
Yeah, that was just pointing out how there is a lot of pressure on mainstream media on how they pick a story, how they cover a story, depending on the kind of traction it's generating, what YouTubers are doing. Let's also not forget the other pressure element here. TV has been traditionally blamed for focusing on metro cities. And many said digital would ensure that there is more, the whole story picking system is more democratized. But the problem now is, as many would have seen already, it's generally keywords, cities that click, that see a lot of stories. For example, an auto driver being rude to his passenger in Bengaluru will hit national headlines. I'm sure there are auto drivers in Kolkata or some other city being rude to their passengers. I never read a story about that. Nolan, do you believe that this is now once again increasing the same problem? That digital outlets will look at stories or certain keywords that work, and then the same sort of stories keep coming up? Or there is, as Amrita was pointing out, there is coverage, disproportionate coverage to a certain city or a certain theme?
Well, let's put it this way, metro cities always get the maximum news coverage. So your Bengaluru, your Chennai, your Hyderabad, I don't see Vijayawada or Visakhapatnam getting it as such, if you look at it. Your Delhi and your Mumbai, these are the places that get the maximum coverage. Even as a TV reporter, I remember, if something would happen outside Bengaluru, no one bothered. Mysuru or Mangaluru, unless it's like really big, it's a communal issue, yes, everyone will run. But even now with digital, if a story is big in Bengaluru, it will be taken. But something outside in Hubli, Dharwad, no one bothers about it. And can't blame anyone about it, because the readers also want something from here. Who are your readers ultimately? They are your urban-centric readers. I'm not saying that people in those districts don't read it, but the point is, news channels, digital websites, even papers focus on urban-centric news. Funnily
Papers
enough,
at least have a city edition.
they have, but the point is, digital websites can focus on anything. I mean, the sky's the limit for them, but that's not really happening, because your readers want what's happening in all your urban areas.
Amrita, you agree? a partially flooded outer ring road in Bangalore is covered by all national news channels. We've had cloudburst in Jammu Kashmir, terrible devastation there, but I don't see the same kind of airtime on national television or even in websites.
I mean, I think that's where actually the mainstream media should take the blame. That's, you're not doing your job properly. You know, when you tend to pick these low-hanging fruit just when you want you're doing this only for traffic. Like, even if we say Bangalore or Metro or the other metros are getting a lot of focus, but have you actually read a story that explains to you why it takes an hour in Bangalore to cross travel 9 kilometers or 1.5? Why is Bangalore so trafficked? What are the reasons? Have there been any investigations done into the way road use is being planned in Bangalore? So I think. So again, there's a skew in editorial sort of decision making, where you pick the sort of the lowest hanging fruit and not go into, when you don't put your reader at the center of it and say, okay, what would make sense, what needs to be done to understand the city better. So I think that's the reason why we are seeing this, and it actually ends up creating more divisive politics, this entire language thing. When we just use one video to be a representative of an entire city, it's kind of dangerous. But again, it's if we agree to go by clicks or go by what the numbers that you're getting on your website, if that is the only metric, there's no way you can escape this kind of journalism.
So Astika, now it's no longer just clicks and a reporter doing a story from a certain city. Now we are looking at, in fact, I don't know how many of you have noticed, most websites have a curation desk. They will sit, they look at what is making headlines on Reddit, pick that up, curate it. It's usually one-sided. It's the narration that's on Reddit that goes into the story. There is no verification what the cops are saying, what the other side is saying. Have you seen that increasing now?
Absolutely. And in fact, algorithms is the invisible editor in an editorial meeting. So in the morning, typically, to keep you well versed with what really happens, you have two kinds of editorial meeting. In the morning, you have everybody brainstorming. Reporters are called. What are you doing? Okay, this is the agenda. Let's do this. By agenda, I don't mean anything else. I just mean that you have to finish this task for the day. And evening is again when you plan the forward day. So now, algorithms, you have a separate desk where you're tracking what is working in terms of SEO, what is working in terms of numbers, and that's precisely why we have a heightened coverage of metro cities, because Bangalore is always a green TRP zone for any news channel. So if you see a lot of videos from Bangalore on your social media, Manyata Tech Park turning into a waterfall that went viral, everything else, that's because people are consuming that kind of content. And truth be told, media is also a business at the end of the day. You also have to look at the fact that, okay, users want more content from Bangalore, let's get it. Users want more content from Gurugram, let's get it. And sadly, that's also an apathy, I would say, on part of the newsroom, because they don't deploy resources as where they are actually required. And I wish that this could change, but it also largely depends on the user behavior. So increasingly, we're seeing that a lot of people love consuming metro story content. That's why something like a South First, which is, I would say, a breath of fresh air, because they focus entirely on South, or Scroll does amazing in-depth pieces. These are stories that require a lot of focus, but if you look at the way the market functions, it's algorithm really doing the talking.
I'd just like to say that there's no algorithm editor in our newsroom. And I mean, it's a very refreshing thing, but we don't look at the numbers at all. We look at what we think journalistically is the right story to do, and we go ahead and do it. And I think it's still possible to do that.
Fantastic. Just want to ask the audience, the overall feeling within the newsroom is that people want to read more of metro stories, or stories from certain metro, from Bengaluru, from Hyderabad or Delhi. Is that what you feel? Or do you think that if given opportunity, you would read something else? something far more in depth. For example, you all track Dharmasthala, but how many of you tracked, or how many of you have read how the entire Saujanya murder case investigation happened?
Sir, talking about the mainstream media, I don't wish to form any controversies here, but what I was trying to aim at is that essentially mainstream media can't really give you an unbiased news, right? Because the media elites, the one who are actually owning the media, they spread the news, right? It is not upon the. I'm not talking about how journalists are not doing their job. I just essentially want to talk about how media is not free from the government's bias. The political propaganda that has been spreading around the country, that is the reason why mainstream media can't really function the way citizen journalism can function. Of course, citizen journalism has its own pros and cons. Like it does not have proper guidelines, it cannot erase fake news. But what citizen journalism can do essentially is it can reach parts where these media channels cannot, because they don't have the authority to go there.
Would you read a story on from Byadgi in Karnataka on the problems the farmer there, the chili farmer there is facing?
No, sir.
Yeah. Sorry, I saw some hand.
Sir, to answer your question, I feel like I would want to read the truth. So if I'm convinced that if there's a story out there that is actually well reported and does not hold any major bias, then I would be interested in it. It wouldn't matter as long as it is actually what is happening and not some...
So how do you identify a bias in a report?
I feel like as journalism students, we have been like, as media students, what we have been told is that a story, it will obviously, if there's like some rape being reported, you cannot take both sides.
Absolutely.
It will always but it should be balanced. There should be multiple perspectives. It should not if there's a story of conflict, then the conflict happens between two or more parties. You cannot just report one side and then call it, oh, it was a conflict. So if a coverage is like that, then I personally would consider...
Would you read something that goes against your belief and your own ideology?
Yes.
Okay, great to hear that as journalists.
Just want to make one point. There are a lot of good stories coming out from districts, but the point is, just an example, if someone is doing something really nice in one of those faraway villages and we put it out, how many people will actually read that story? When compared to a horrible, let me not use words, but a politician saying something over here in Bengaluru and Chennai, everyone will sit up and read that. The point is, we would love to actually carry good stories. I like those type of stories, human interest stories, because they really matter to people. But I believe it matters to people, but people really don't feel the need to read those. So hence you can't, media channels, websites, TV channels can't be blamed for not taking interest in reporting stories from outside metro cities, because ultimately it's business and two, TRPs and numbers.
Yeah, also, just before I go to PK sir, just to let you know, getting a story from a tier 2, tier 3 city or a rural area, it is a lot of production cost, right? It's lesser for digital and for newspaper, a little more for TV. But it's easy to get a controversial statement from, say, a politician in Bangalore. Usually their own team shoots it, puts it on their WhatsApp group, you have access for it. It takes zero production cost. Yes, sir.
Just some quick observations. One is with regard to what could be the coverage. So there were discussions about whether it could be Bangalore-centric or whether it could be looking at what's happening in Hubli and all that. If we have clarity about whether we are an organization, news organization, which is audience-centric or public-centric, then the clarity is most likely to come. And the second, are we addressing the needs of the public or the tastes of the public, then more clarity is likely to come. And the third thing, if it is a national media, then it has to stand up to that role. If it's a metro-based media, let them call themselves metro-based media, right? They can't be a free rider and say that we are national media and leave out a significant chunk of the nation, and that's not right.
That's a valid point. Amrita, you think this whole nomenclature itself is problematic? You talk about a national media, national news channel, they'll probably have presence in 12 to 14 cities in the country.
No, absolutely. Also, I think there's been a general lack of investment across newsrooms in TV, in print, in people, in actual reporters. Who are the people who actually get your stories? You have to have, boots on the ground. And of course, like the gentleman pointed out, that it's up to, it's your editorial policy that will decide what stories you pick. It's impossible for any organization to cover this entire country. It's too big, it's too complex, and it's actually the local media which can serve the needs of a local population. But I think generally there has been, there's very little money being spent on reporting across newsrooms, and I think we were talking, Nolan, how even TV journalism, TV channels earlier, there would actually be proper features carried on across news, right? I mean, there would be stories from rural India. I mean, I grew up watching NDTV, and there would be stories from across rural India, from very quirky stories about interesting things that people are doing, as well as human interest stories. And all of that is gone, and what we are seeing and what we are all responding to is this complete dumbing down of our media ecosystem, right? In which only the inconsequential things are given the kind of attention, and therefore we are sucked into this attention economy where only the banal and the trivial surfaces. It was not so earlier, and that is because there was proper investment into reporting. There was an editorial focus into surfacing stories, and that's the work that a lot of media organizations should go back to doing, and a lot of organizations are doing.
Which also brings me to the next point on this entire chatter about use of AI in journalism. We know there are organizations that are using AI to, say, edit a video, do a video story without the human editor in place, or we have copies being curated by AI. Amrita, how much of it is dependable? Because, I mean, just to give an example, I don't know how many of you read this news. There was a income tax appellate tribunal order given in Bangalore. I think this is at the beginning of the year. And this tribunal ordered tax collection of around 600 crore rupees from a partnership firm. And later on, when the petitioner saw the order, there were two orders that were quoted. One was from the High Court, another from the Supreme Court. They just couldn't find that order. It later on turned out that the whole order of this income tax appellate tribunal was possibly drafted via ChatGPT. So these two High Court orders and Supreme Court orders were just made up.
No, I think it's the question again of media organizations are in theory accountable for the facts that we put out. In that case, how do you use AI? Because it's a technology that's being sort of, in some cases, forced on us, and in some cases is also a tool for us. So I think in Scroll we have we call it a living document. We have some kind of a policy on AI, which is of course is going to be revised because AI itself is moving so fast. But one of the things that we clearly sort of say is that all these tools have to be human sort of moderated. It has to be, a human has to be in charge of this. We use AI to say improve certain illustrations, but we will not use AI to say mimic any voice. We will not say write like Nolan Pinto and produce an article which somebody can pass off as Nolan Pinto's. So these are guardrails that we have put in place. Recently we did use, AI is of course a great tool, we recently did stories on the Election Commission. I don't know how many of you know, but the Election Commission is carrying out this intensive revision of voter rolls in Bihar, and it's put put out a lot of data which is not very sort of say, I would just say reader friendly or journalist friendly. Now there was this data put out on the number of 65 lakh people have been excluded from the first draft of the voter roll. Now it had very few details of who are the people being left out. Is it more women? Is it more men? Is it more Hindus, more Muslims, more upper caste, more lower caste? So we had these really huge tranches of data, and so we used an AI tool to help us make sense of this. Now, this is the kind of use case that I feel like we buy into, because this is where we are in control. We are using AI for a certain end that we have set for ourselves. Again, so I mean, this is largely what we think. The question of reliability is a big one, because if while the AI, when it summarizes a story, for instance, does it know the difference between a direct quote and an indirect quote? Right? Can it say that X, Y, Z, this person has said this, rather than say this is the reality? Right? Like these are the nuances that we know, right? What is a direct quote? What is an indirect quote? Does it know how to filter those nuances? If it doesn't, will it not be misrepresenting reality? So if a newsroom decides to use AI, those are the sort of pitfalls and the minefields one has to be careful about, and I think one has to think very hard on that.
Yeah, newsrooms is one place. Swastika, for reporters, what does it mean, use of AI?
So look, when it comes to AI, a couple of words that come to my mind or came to my mind initially: intimidating, scary, something that's forced upon us perhaps, but also very exciting. And also, let's not forget, change is the only constant in life. So when you look at media houses, legacy media houses, international, national, even local, everybody wants to have that fastest fingers first on the AI approach. AI cannot replace human effort, because you have to have your own editorial sense, curation, and above all, the entire fact-checking process. Somebody has to go on the ground, verify that information, put out a story, and if multiple people put out the same set of facts, AI just crowdsources it and tells you that, hey, this is the truth and this isn't. Even Grok is not accurate in that sense, the one that Elon Musk is putting a lot of force on. But going back to basics, let's understand what exactly AI is. AI is an assistant. It's here to help you, and I tell you this because AI can help you in transcribing. There could be stories in multiple languages. AI is one tool that will help you in pushing out content within seconds, and that is a great asset for newsroom. That also means that people who were engaged with that profession, that set of work, can now be incorporated into some other band of work. It doesn't necessarily mean they are being laid off their jobs. The second aspect is background research. You know, when you write stories, you have to give context. Suppose you're writing about Dharmasthala, you have to build context on what really happened in the past, and to pull out all that information when you have a deadline breathing down on your neck, it's challenging. So what AI, or rather companies, different media houses are doing is they are coming up with their own set of AI tools where they have already a data bank of information on what really happened in the past, and that helps you as a reporter to understand, read up and write that context in your copy, because there is no story without no context. The other aspect that AI can be used for is simply to analyze all the documents. Suppose you have a legal document, like Amrita mentioned, and this is something that's been widely adapted, legal jargon. We are civic reporters, we've covered how do you understand legal stories. AI can help you. So like I said, treat AI, or rather our approach towards AI is, hey, let's treat each other with caution, but also use it to a maximum effort. But AI cannot ever replace human, because if AI makes a mistake, it is the human intervention. I look at the story, I proofread, AI is using a machine language, but you can change that language and come up with something on your own to make it more interesting. So that is the way I think the AI boom is likely to take up in a big way in media industry. That's the way I see it.
I mean, just to mention, she mentioned about transcription and transcribing. Let's not forget, in fact, Facebook had killed Sidramaya. Right? There's a translation that went out from the Chief Minister's handle. It said, I don't know if it's ChatGPT or Meta or something. Yeah. So that went wrong. So Nolan, the question here is, which are the jobs that can get replaced by AI in a newsroom? Okay. Video editor, possibly. I don't know if number of copy editors can be reduced. Amrita probably be in a better place to answer that. You think some of these jobs will either be totally done away with, or you think you can manage with lesser number of people?
I don't think they'll be done away with, but the number of people will actually lessen. I'll tell you what, simple idea. What we do for video editing, especially with my video editors, they use a lot of AI. Trust me, AI is beautiful. But like what you mentioned, the human is always in the loop, has to always be in the loop. Simple things what he does. If you record a podcast, for example, and I'm sure the ones who use YouTube over here or any YouTube influencers, you can do magic with it. Just cutting down an echo if you're outside there with the traffic. All these things were not possible earlier. I remember in the newsroom, the video editors would struggle. I mean, many times they would ask us, where did you shoot this? Why did you shoot it with so much of noise? But with AI, it changes everything. But again, I just want to reiterate, the man or woman, M in capital, has to always be in the loop. AI should always be used as a tool. It will reduce the number of people. Jobs will not be lost, but it'll be a few more people fighting for that one job. That's what AI is going to do, but it's not going to take away people's jobs.
You agree, Amrita?
I mean, I don't know, honestly. I think it's very it's an uncertain landscape. I don't know what jobs will go, what not. But as far as I can see, I mean, you know, journalism is a human effort. It's an entirely human endeavor. It's about you asking questions of your society, of your politics. I don't know how you can replace human. You know, you can't get machines to replace that. I can't imagine ChatGPT going out like my reporter does in very difficult conditions, whether it's in Assam or it's in Manipur or it's in Kashmir, interviewing people in very difficult circumstances and trying to get their sort of reality and their lived experiences out. I don't see a ChatGPT ever doing that. So I do believe, like I could be an idealist and could be proved wrong. I do believe that there is an integral human element in journalism that will not go. I don't think AI is the challenge. I think, like I pointed out before, I think it's the fact that society, politics, our institutions should invest in journalism, which they are not, right? We, like newsrooms like us, we struggle to raise funds. A lot of us are struggling to get reader attention, and that's because in some way our society has stopped investing value in the work of journalism. I think that is the real challenge for journalism. And you know, AI is a tool. These are technocratic technological decisions, but the actual human sort of political decision of, you know, why is journalism important? Why do you need journalism in your society? A lot of us are not answering that, and I think that is for me the real more of a challenge.
And Harish, to just add on to that, the way I look at AI, and perhaps I hope the larger audience also looks at it in the same way, when you cut redundancy in the newsroom, when you say, for instance, you have earnings season, every quarter you have earnings in terms of business journalism. The earnings pattern, perhaps the AI tool can identify, take out the pointers, okay, this company has reported so and so profit, so and so loss from tariffs in the, hitting them. AI can be used to sort of crunch down the main points, and that reduces redundancy. That also helps you in putting out the news first. But the brighter side is that perhaps we can have more resources within the newsroom being pulled in to do hard-hitting ground reports. Because that way, perhaps we can look at a situation where we have more coverage from other cities, from different parts of the world. Russia-Ukraine war is going on. We have relentless coverage being done by international media houses, and the lives are being lost. So many journalists have lost. Perhaps a little more resources on those fronts to come up with hard-hitting reports. And I always believe you're going to find readers who would love that kind of readership. And the best part is that storytelling is no longer being gate kept by legacy media houses. Anybody here who just wants to, you mentioned Dhruv Rathi does research-based reports, Samlesh does hard-hitting ground reports. There is always going to be a scope of that, and those people are not a challenge to media. Perhaps for media, what we need to look at is a way we modify our skill sets. Perhaps look at the way we write, look at the way we understand news without foregoing the basics, and also the fact that perhaps we can integrate AI in a legal way. If AI is writing a copy, I hope there are media houses saying that this is an AI generated copy and this has been not written by human. I have not seen a lot of media houses doing that as of now, but AI is being integrated in a different way. So perhaps a word for all of you who want to join the profession, look at the way you want to rethink about your skill sets. Video edit, be a one-person army. You can write, you can report, and at the same time perhaps you can look at the way you can bring out more stories and do content in an interesting way. Reels, long format, podcasts, newsletters, interesting times lie ahead, I feel.
Also, talking about challenge, one serious challenge that media houses now are facing is the revenue sharing model, the non-existence of a revenue sharing model. Initially, it was Google and Facebook that was taking over a huge chunk of revenue. Now you have AI that's also taking information from most news websites, absolutely zero revenue sharing. Amrita, is that a real challenge now? Especially considering now that you have Trump who's come out, I think, day before yesterday and said you can't tax IT companies or digital companies. We will impose a tariff on you or there will be repercussions.
Right, I think the earlier speaker, who was such an interesting visual artist, he mentioned the idea of data colonization, and that really struck a chord with me, because what we are seeing is that a lot of websites are facing a lot of traffic from AI models who are trying to, who are basically scraping data of us and to train their LLMs, right? And what they and they're basically making sort of money off our labor without paying us. And it's a very interesting thing that Cloudflare, the tech company, has recently come out with a software. It's a firewall that it's offering to all websites, and it says that it will stop any AI models from scraping data off you. So if you subscribe to this, then Scroll will say its data will not be scraped off. So I think it's a huge challenge, right? The fact that technology, like a small newsroom like us can operate because of technology, right? Earlier, like 40 years ago, we would have to buy a printing press, buy expensive newsprint. Those costs would have been prohibitive for a small newsroom to run and operate. We could do it because of technology, but that same technology places us in the hands of big tech companies who have changed their algorithm in the last 10 years, probably about 10,000 times, So for leaving whether it's a content creator or whether it's a news website to scramble to adapt. So, and this is not which is why I meant societies have to invest politically, policy-wise, into thinking about what is a solution to this, because the labor that we put in is genuine, and it serves a social purpose, and one has to find, I think, a way that we get paid for it.
Swastika, Australia tried to have some sort of a legislation that will ensure that there is some sort of a revenue sharing model where Google, Facebook and others share a part of their profit with news channels or websites. India, there was a chatter, but I don't think that's reached any meaningful stage at all.
As long as people follow ethics in terms of if Facebook or any kind of social media giant wants to impose their own biases and then pay you to do that news, because we did see that kind of polarization largely come to play during the US elections, and that is not healthy. And so if there can be a healthy integration, and I dare say that perhaps it's going to be something that's soon going to be a reality in India, because let's say it's again a business generating model, why would somebody shy away from it? So I think lines need to be drawn, but we have to see how that is going to come forth in in our country?
Absolutely, Nolan. For a website that is focusing on South, which possibly is not pan-India, ensuring that this revenue comes to them is far more important than, say, a legacy media house.
Resource crunch is a major issue, and you have today two major models. I think one is your investor model, the other one is the subscription model. Now the subscription model focuses on niche stories, a niche, very niche audience. But for many of us, like South First, we are focused on general news. Now some focus on policies, we focus on politics, health and culture. But the point is, generating revenue is not easy unless you want to be subservient to a politician, then you take money from a politician or from an industry, a businessman. What we do, if I can just talk about what we do, is we focus on conducting these conclaves, a political conclave, a health conclave. These are ways to generate revenue. Generate revenue, keep yourself away from political influence, and then people will, there's a trust factor that you're not under anyone else. But generating revenue is not easy. How many people in India would actually want to, say, even pay 100 rupees or 150 rupees per month? Not many. I mean, I can't say anything about it because many are salaried. People in India want to consume news, but they want it free. And there's also a choice amongst so many websites. Why should I pay only for one? Because if I really am interested in that, then I'd want to pay for everyone else. So no one wants to do that. So it's a very, very difficult thing to generate revenue.
Of course, there's no, I mean, one just has to agree with you. It's a difficult model that we are in. We don't really have answers.
My final question to you, Amrita, is this whole subscription model. You think that is something that can replace the existing model? Yes, Nolan spoke about events. Yes, news channels do it, even news websites are doing it. But that will also get saturated at some point in time.
So right now, we haven't really experimented with the subscription model, but and we haven't put our journalism behind a paywall. And it's like, again, there's a debate within the newsroom because we believe journalism is for public use. It serves a public purpose, so it should be available to whoever needs it. But again, it's becoming very difficult. We have a membership program, and if any of us, if you want to contribute, please feel free to do so. But it's a uphill task. It's an uphill battle to figure out the right mix of things that can work.
I think I've already overshot time that is given to us.